The sun was beginning its slow descent over Camp Pendleton, casting long shadows across the dusty parade ground. Dust swirled in the light as Captain Alina Ramirez's boots struck the concrete in a steady, deliberate rhythm. She moved with the confidence of someone who belonged here, not as a visitor, not as a curiosity, but as a Marine who had earned every step she took. Yet, from the first glance, there was an almost imperceptible tension in the air. Her reputation preceded her, though few knew the full story. Alina had earned her stripes not just through talent, but through countless hours in the field, navigating situations most officers could barely imagine. Yet here, in this sprawling California base, whispers floated like smoke among the seasoned men and women of the Corps. Whispers that she would be just another captain to manage paperwork, and probably couldn't handle a single platoon under fire. Major Tom Harlan leaned against the doorway of the briefing room, arms crossed. He was tall, with a square jaw and a weathered face that told 1,000 stories of firefights and grueling exercises. He had a reputation for sarcasm, and there was a glint in his eyes that suggested he enjoyed testing newcomers. When he first heard about Alina's arrival, a smirk had spread across his face. A female captain. Good luck, he thought. As Alina entered the room, the murmur of voices died down. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. Her uniform was immaculate, pressed to perfection, and her demeanor radiated quiet authority. Her dark hair was pulled back in a precise bun, and her eyes, sharp and assessing, scanned the room with the intensity of someone who noticed everything and missed nothing. "Captain Ramirez reporting for duty," she said, her voice steady, but carrying a subtle undertone of steel. Harlan tilted his head slightly, almost mockingly. "Captain," he said, echoing her words, "I hope your paperwork is in order. We wouldn't want someone of modest rank giving orders here." He let the word modest hang in the air, expecting it to sting. Alina's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, not mocking, not angry, just knowing. She tilted her head, meeting his gaze evenly. "Modest rank, huh?" she asked softly, but there was an undercurrent of challenge in her tone. "We'll see about that." The room shifted. Some Marines exchanged glances, curious but uncertain. It was unusual to see such poise from a newcomer, and even more unusual to see a woman stand her ground so effortlessly in a room full of men who had spent their entire careers testing one another's limits. Harlan laughed, the sound low and sardonic. "We'll see," he said, shrugging as if dismissing her entirely. But even as he spoke, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Something about her was different. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of introductions, paperwork, and subtle tests. Alina listened carefully to every briefing, asking questions that were sharp, incisive, and undeniably intelligent. She didn't overtalk. She didn't show off. She simply absorbed, calculated, and occasionally offered insights that made even seasoned officers pause. Harlan watched from the sidelines, nodding her every move. He had expected her to falter at some point, to reveal a weakness that he could tease, mock, or exploit. But she didn't. Not once. She carried herself like someone who had faced far worse than him or anyone in that room. During a break, Harlan approached her. He leaned casually against a wall, arms crossed again, a practiced smirk on his face. "So, Captain," he said, testing the waters, "how long have you been in the Marines? I mean, really in the thick of it." Alina's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in scrutiny. She considered him carefully before answering. "Long enough to know that rank on paper doesn't always reflect experience in the field," she said, her voice steady, controlled. "And I've learned to let actions speak louder than titles." For a moment Harlan felt a rare unease. That subtle, measured tone of hers, unflinching, confident, commanding attention without demanding it, was disarming. He chuckled, trying to reclaim his sense of authority. "Actions, huh? Well, I'll be watching. Make sure those actions match the talk." Alina tilted her head slightly, letting a small, almost imperceptible smile touch her lips. "Oh, they will," she replied. The afternoon sun had dipped lower, and the shadows across the room deepened. The Marines began to trickle out, their curiosity about the new captain simmering. Whispers returned, this time tinged with cautious respect. Some wondered if the rumors about her were true. Others debated quietly if Harlan's skepticism was justified. Alina didn't chase gossip or attempt to prove herself. She simply observed, noting the strengths, weaknesses, and habits of the men around her. Leadership, she understood, wasn't about loud declarations. It was about perception, timing, and the subtle assertion of authority. And in that room, she had begun to assert herself without a single overt challenge. Later, she walked across the parade ground, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Harlan followed at a distance, curiosity gnawing at him. Something about the way she moved, the way she commanded space without words, was unsettling, and yet fascinating. He had seen leaders before, but none quite like this. The sky was now painted in streaks of orange and crimson, the last light of day reflecting off the gleaming helmets of the Marines as they went about their drills. Alina stopped briefly, taking it all in, her eyes scanning every corner, every movement. She noted the sloppy drills, the gaps in coordination, the subtle weaknesses in command. She catalogued it all silently, knowing that understanding these men, and the base itself, would be as important as any combat mission. Harlan caught up to her and cleared his throat. "Captain, you think this is easy. The Marines don't take kindly to." Alina turned to face him fully, her eyes locking onto his. "I'm not here to be liked," she said quietly, almost a whisper but heavy with weight. "I'm here to lead." Harlan blinked. The words hit him harder than he expected. There was no arrogance in her voice, no need to prove herself, only a quiet, unshakable certainty. For a moment the only sound was the wind over the base, the distant shouts of Marines, and the faint metallic clang of training equipment. Harlan realized he had underestimated her from the very beginning. He had assumed she was just a new captain with ambition, but there was a presence about her, calm, controlled, commanding, that was impossible to ignore. "All right, Captain," he said finally, his voice lower now, devoid of its usual smirk. "We'll see what you can do." Alina nodded once, a slight but unmistakable gesture. "We will," she replied. And with that, she walked on, disappearing into the orange haze of sunset, leaving Harlan standing alone on the parade ground, a strange mixture of curiosity, caution, and begrudging respect settling over him. The Marines had come to watch her, to judge her, and perhaps even to doubt her. But something told him, deep in his gut, that Alina Ramirez was not just another officer. She was someone who could change everything about the way this base operated, and perhaps even the way Harlan himself viewed leadership. As the night fell and shadows deepened, he remained standing there, staring after her retreating figure, knowing one thing for certain. This captain was no ordinary officer, and the coming days would reveal just how extraordinary she truly was. And in that silence, a single thought echoed in Harlan's mind. Who is she really? The first morning at Camp Pendleton dawned crisp and clear, the air carrying a hint of salt from the nearby Pacific. Alina Ramirez arrived early, before most of the Marines, boots crunching against the gravel as she made her way to the training field. Her eyes swept over the sprawling grounds, rows of obstacles, the clatter of rifles being cleaned, and squads of Marines stretching and preparing for drills. Every detail mattered, and she noticed all of it. Major Tom Harlan was already there, leaning against the edge of the obstacle course, arms crossed as usual. His brow furrowed slightly as he observed her. "Captain," he called, his voice carrying across the field, "hope you're ready to keep up. This isn't a parade." Alina gave a small, polite nod. "I don't intend to fall behind," she replied. Her tone was calm, unflinching, but there was a quiet edge of challenge beneath it. The words alone were enough to make Harlan pause for a fraction of a second longer than expected. The Marines assembled into squads, and Alina took a position at the front of hers. Her presence alone drew attention. Even those skeptical of her abilities instinctively straightened their posture. She didn't speak loudly or bark commands. She didn't need to. A glance, a gesture, a subtle shift in stance, the men knew to follow. Harlan circled the field, observing her. He noticed the subtle things, the way she adjusted the weight of a Marine's pack without comment, the quick correction of a poorly executed maneuver, the precise timing of her orders. Nothing was wasted, nothing arbitrary. Her control of the field was seamless, effortless, almost surgical. "All right, squad," she called, voice clear over the morning breeze. "We're going through the obstacle course today, full speed. Eyes sharp, minds sharper. Communicate, trust each other, and move as one unit. Go." The Marines sprang into action. Soldiers vaulted over walls, scrambled through muddy trenches, and swung across ropes. Alina moved with them, matching their pace perfectly. When a Marine stumbled over a loose plank, she was there instantly, steadying him without breaking stride. Harlan's brow furrowed deeper. He had seen captains in the past, but few who could operate with this kind of precision under pressure. Then came the first obstacle, the simulated ambush. Black smoke billowed from staged pyrotechnics as enemy figures darted across the field, shouting and firing blanks. The Marines hesitated, instinctively scattering, some unsure of where to go. Harlan's voice came naturally, almost as if he were narrating the scene. Not bad, but not enough. Alina's eyes narrowed, scanning the chaos. She didn't panic. She didn't yell. Instead, she moved to the center of the fray, signaling one squad to flank left while she directed another to take the high ground. Her hands moved with precision, gestures punctuated with clear, deliberate words. "Hernandez, cover the flank, yes now. Jackson, suppressing fire, don't stop. Rodriguez, move behind that ridge and hold position." Her voice cut through the noise, but it wasn't just volume that commanded attention. It was certainty. Every Marine on the field adjusted instinctively to her directions, the confusion melting into a coordinated maneuver. Harlan watched, unable to suppress a flicker of surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered under his breath. The ambush simulation escalated. Explosions rang out, sand kicked up around them, smoke stung the eyes, and chaos threatened to overtake the exercise. But Alina moved like a conductor of an orchestra, every command purposeful, every movement deliberate. Her squad responded without hesitation, neutralizing threats, securing zones, and keeping casualty numbers minimal. By the end of the drill, the field was quiet. Marines were breathing hard, faces streaked with dirt and sweat. Harlan approached Alina, a rare note of awe in his voice. "Captain, that was impressive." Alina glanced at him, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Thanks, Major, but it's only a drill." Harlan shook his head, almost in disbelief. "Only a drill," he gestured toward the field. "You handled that chaos better than most commanders I've seen in real combat." Alina's expression didn't change. Calm, collected, unreadable. "Chaos isn't new," she said simply. "Discipline and observation are what matter. You can't panic when everything around you is falling apart. You adjust, you lead." Harlan stepped back, silent for a long moment. He realized he had underestimated her completely. There was a depth, a skill, and a confidence in her he hadn't anticipated. And something about her, something unspoken, made it clear she was capable of far more than a captain should be. Later, during debriefing, she reviewed the performance with each squad. Instead of praise, she offered constructive critique. "Hernandez, you hesitated on the left flank. That delay could cost lives. Jackson, your suppression fire was effective, but your cover angle left a blind spot. Rodriguez, you held the high ground well, but communication was weak." Each correction was precise, detailed, and fair. Marines listened intently, some exchanging glances as they absorbed her authority. Harlan stood silently at the back, notebook in hand, jotting down notes he would later review. He didn't even realize he was doing it until Alina caught his gaze. "You taking notes, Major?" she asked casually. Harlan swallowed, caught off guard. Just observing," he replied, attempting to sound casual though his voice betrayed him. Alina's gaze lingered on him for a moment. "Observation is good," she said softly. Learning is better. The comment hung in the air, pointed, yet not confrontational. Harlan's mouth opened to reply, but no words came. Instead, he nodded, his mind racing. Who is this woman really? As the sun climbed higher, the Marines wrapped up the exercise. The field, once chaotic, was now orderly. Sweat-streaked faces and dirt-covered uniforms reflected the intensity of the morning. Some Marines whispered among themselves, excitement and disbelief evident in their tones. "Did you see her?" one asked. "She didn't even break a sweat." Harlan's attention returned to Alina. She moved quietly among the squads, offering corrections, adjusting postures and checking equipment. Her hands were steady, her movements precise. She had the uncanny ability to command authority without ever raising her voice unnecessarily. The final test came unexpectedly. A surprise drill was initiated, a simulated vehicle ambush on a convoy returning from a training run. Explosions sounded, smoke filled the air, and screams, staged but realistic, echoed across the field. Marines froze. Panic flickered in several eyes. Harlan instinctively stepped forward to take control, but Alina didn't wait for orders. She sprinted toward the convoy, evaluating the threats with surgical precision. "Cover left, suppress fire. Vehicle 1, reposition now. Evacuate the wounded, move fast." Her commands were calm, rapid, and unflinching. Marines responded immediately, following her every gesture. Within moments, what could have been utter chaos was transformed into a coordinated, efficient response. Harlan, for the first time that morning, felt a pang of both admiration and discomfort. He had assumed authority would naturally fall to him, but Alina had seized it effortlessly, without arrogance, without hesitation. When the drill concluded, silence fell over the field. The Marines were spent but exhilarated. They glanced at Alina with a newfound respect, all written on their faces. Harlan remained rooted, staring at her, his usual smirk nowhere to be found. "Captain," he said finally, his voice low, measured, "you handled that remarkably." Alina glanced at him briefly. "Thank you, Major. It's about preparation, observation, and confidence. Panic solves nothing." Harlan nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. And for the first time, he felt genuinely challenged, not by an idea but by a person. As she walked away, the sun casting long shadows across the training field, Harlan watched her, a strange mix of respect and unease settling over him. Who is she really? He thought again. And what has she done before she came here? The day ended, but the questions remained, lingering like smoke in the air. Everyone on the field had seen her skill, her precision, and her control, but no one, not even Harlan, had yet glimpsed the full scope of Alina Ramirez's capabilities. And as he watched her disappear among the tents, Harlan realized that the coming days at Camp Pendleton would be anything but ordinary. This captain was no ordinary officer, and whatever she was hiding, it was about to reveal itself. The midday sun was hot and relentless, glinting off the metal roofs of Camp Pendleton's sprawling mess hall. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cooking food, coffee, and the faint tang of sweat. The clatter of trays and the hum of conversations filled the space, a typical midday chaos that would overwhelm many, but not Alina Ramirez. She moved through the room with the same calm, purposeful energy she had on the training field, her eyes quietly scanning every detail. Marines looked up as she entered, some nodding, others whispering. Rumors of the new captain's skill had already begun circulating. Harlan, naturally, had his own audience. He leaned against a table near the entrance, smirking at a couple of junior officers. "Watch her," he said in a low tone, half teasing, half warning. "She's a captain. Don't expect anything remarkable. This is going to be entertaining." The junior officers chuckled, exchanging glances. Harlan's confidence was infectious, or so they thought. But Alina's presence demanded attention in a different way. She didn't need loud words, flashy gestures, or displays of authority. Every motion was deliberate, every glance calculated. She moved to a table near the center, scanning the menus. A Marine called out, trying to be friendly, but his voice carried the subtle undertone of condescension often aimed at female officers. "Captain Ramirez, you're sure you can handle this?" Alina turned her head slightly, eyes locking onto him with an intensity that made him stumble mid-sentence. "Handle what exactly?" she asked, voice calm, almost melodic, but sharp enough to cut through any pretense of doubt. The Marine hesitated. "Just, you know the mess hall crowd, it's tough in here." Alina smiled faintly. "I've handled tougher," she said simply, and with that moved on, her tray clinking softly as she carried it to a nearby table. The murmurs around the room grew louder, curiosity mixing with awe. Harlan, watching from the entrance, let out a low whistle. Something about the way she carried herself unsettled him, not in a threatening way, but in a way that challenged his expectations. Then came the moment of confrontation. As she sat down, Harlan approached, smirk in place, leaning casually against the table. "Captain, I hope you're ready for the real challenge," he said, his tone teasing. "Not drills, not obstacle courses. The mess hall social maneuvering. You think you can survive?" Alina looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. Her eyes were sharp, but her expression neutral. "Major, I think I can manage," she replied, the smallest hint of amusement in her tone. Harlan chuckled, leaning closer. "Good, because I don't think I've ever met a captain who could hold their own in here." Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Maybe you just haven't met the right captain," she said softly, letting the words linger in the air. For a few moments the banter seemed innocuous, almost friendly, but there was an underlying tension, a subtle power play. Harlan, experienced as he was, felt an unusual tightness in his chest. He had underestimated her, and that realization alone made him uneasy. The junior officers watched quietly, sensing the undercurrent of something more than casual teasing. One of them leaned toward Harlan. "Major, she seems different. Not just confident, like she actually knows what she's doing." Harlan waved them off, though his mind was already racing. "Different," he muttered under his breath, "is one word for it." The conversation continued, subtle jabs exchanged with precision. Harlan assumed he was leading the interaction, subtly testing her, probing her reactions. But Alina matched him at every turn. Her responses were measured, calm, and revealing nothing. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't intimidated. She simply existed in her own space of authority. Then came the pivotal moment. Harlan, thinking he had a chance to assert superiority, leaned closer and said, almost jokingly, "So, Captain Ramirez, do you actually have field experience? Or is this all theory from the classroom?" The room seemed to quiet slightly. Even the clatter of trays and chatter of Marines faded into the background. Alina's eyes locked onto his. There was a long pause, a silence so heavy it drew the attention of everyone nearby. "I've commanded units larger than this entire camp," she said softly, but with undeniable authority. Her voice carried over the ambient noise, drawing focus without effort. "And my record, unbroken missions in 3 theaters of operation." Harlan's smirk faltered. The words hit him unexpectedly, their weight settling in like a stone in his chest. He had assumed she was just another captain, competent perhaps, but limited. The truth, revealed so casually, shook that assumption to its core. A few Marines at nearby tables glanced over, their curiosity piqued. Whispers began to spread. "Who is she really?" Alina didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The statement alone was enough. Her calm, measured tone conveyed power, experience, and authority. She didn't boast. She simply stated facts. And in that there was far more weight than any bragging could convey. Harlan, for the first time that day, felt a flicker of doubt. His usual confidence, the armor he wore so easily, began to crack slightly. He had underestimated her completely. And now, in the center of a bustling mess hall, he had no idea how to respond. The tension was palpable. Marines near them shifted, their curiosity and awe growing. Harlan opened his mouth, then closed it. Words failed him, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the truth of Alina Ramirez's presence was overwhelming. Alina, sensing the subtle shift, allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She didn't gloat. She didn't demand recognition. She simply let the silence speak for her. The room seemed to pause. Even the clattering of trays, the low hum of conversation, faded slightly as if acknowledging the weight of her statement. Harlan finally cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure. "Well, that's impressive," he said, though his usual smug tone was gone. There was something humbled in his voice, something cautious. Alina nodded once, still calm, still measured. "Experience speaks louder than rank, Major," she said. "And leadership isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about results and keeping your people alive." Her words hung in the air. Every Marine present felt the weight of them, the truth in them. Even Harlan, for all his training and experience, couldn't deny it. He had walked into the mess hall expecting to assert control, expecting to tease, expecting to dominate the conversation. Instead, he was silent, staring at a captain who was no ordinary officer, and who clearly had far more authority and experience than he had anticipated. For the rest of lunch, Alina moved among the tables, offering subtle guidance, checking equipment and conversing with Marines. She didn't flaunt her experience, but her presence alone communicated it. Each gesture, each glance, each interaction was measured, precise, and quietly commanding. Harlan, meanwhile, sat at the edge of the mess hall, notebook closed, his smirk replaced by an expression he didn't often wear, curiosity mixed with awe. He kept glancing at her, trying to piece together the puzzle of who this captain really was. Every clue he had gathered over the past 2 days pointed to someone extraordinary, but he still had no idea just how extraordinary. And as the last of the Marines left the mess hall, finishing their meals and exchanging whispers, Alina collected her tray and headed toward the exit. Harlan watched her go, a strange mixture of respect, fascination, and unease settling over him. Who is she really? He thought again, the question echoing in his mind. He knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary captain, and whatever she was hiding, whatever secrets lay behind that calm, commanding presence, it was far more than anyone in the mess hall, and certainly he himself, could have anticipated. The shadows lengthened outside as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The hum of activity outside the mess hall continued, but inside, the lingering tension of that brief confrontation remained. Marines would talk about it for days. Harlan would think about it for longer. And Alina Ramirez, silent, collected, and resolute, had once again shown that appearances could be deceiving, and that true authority didn't need to shout to be heard. And somewhere in the back of Harlan's mind, a single thought persisted, growing louder with each passing moment. "I have no idea who this woman really is, and I need to find out." That night, Camp Pendleton was quieter than usual. The hum of generators and distant shouts from the night drills were the only sounds breaking the stillness. Major Tom Harlan sat alone in his office, the pale glow of a desk lamp illuminating scattered papers and mission reports. For hours, he had been trying to make sense of the past 2 days. Captain Alina Ramirez, her calm authority, her precision, her skill, had unsettled him in a way no officer ever had. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He had assumed she was just another competent captain, perhaps ambitious, perhaps skilled. But now, after witnessing her lead the drills and handle the mess hall, he realized how wrong he had been. There was something in her eyes, something in the way she moved and commanded respect, that hinted at experience far beyond what her rank suggested. Unable to shake his curiosity and a growing unease, he made a decision. He had to know. If Alina was hiding something, even a trace of her true capability, the files in the command center would tell him. Harlan rose, walking briskly down the dimly lit corridors of the barracks. The echoes of his boots on the concrete floors seemed unusually loud tonight. He knew the base was secure, but there was a thrill to this mission of his own making. The command center was nearly deserted at this hour. Most personnel were resting, preparing for tomorrow's drills, unaware of the storm quietly approaching in Harlan's mind. He reached the secure file room, a small, unassuming space with reinforced doors and layers of security protocols. With his clearance, he bypassed the first lock. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound as he stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of paper and machine oil, a scent that carried a weight of history, of decisions made and recorded in ink, forever capturing the actions of men and women who had shaped the Marine Corps. Harlan began sifting through files at random, starting with routine mission reports. He was looking for nothing in particular, and yet he knew he would recognize her work if he saw it. Hours passed as he rifled through folders, scanning names and mission titles. Then suddenly he found it. Ramirez, E. Special Operations Command, Multi-Theater Deployments Classified. His pulse quickened. The folder was thick, much thicker than expected for a captain's record. He flipped it open, scanning the pages. Medal citations, commendations for operations in hostile zones, strategic mission planning documents, missions that no captain by any normal standard should have led. There were details of clandestine operations, intelligence gathering in hostile territories, negotiation of high-risk engagements with minimal casualties, coordination of multi-unit strikes across continents. The level of responsibility, the precision, the effectiveness of her commands, it was staggering. Harlan's fingers trembled slightly as he read further. She had been in operations across Iraq, Afghanistan, and North Africa. Every single one had been executed flawlessly. Casualty rates were minimal. The missions had been delicate, dangerous, and often covert. And yet here she was, quietly arriving at Camp Pendleton as a captain, her true rank and capabilities hidden beneath a veil of modesty. He leaned back stunned. How, he muttered to himself, how is this possible? The files revealed more. Tactical simulations she had led, soldiers' lives she had saved, intelligence networks she had managed, and leadership training she had conducted for senior officers in multiple commands. There were reports praising her decisiveness, her calm under fire, and her uncanny ability to anticipate enemy moves before they happened. It was as if every challenge had been scripted, yet she had executed it flawlessly in the real world. Harlan flipped to a page marked with a bright red sticker, Confidential, Top Secret. It detailed an operation in which Alina had been the sole commander, coordinating a multinational task force during a crisis that could have escalated into an international incident. She had negotiated terms, positioned troops, and orchestrated a resolution without a single casualty. Harlan's mind raced. This is impossible. A captain. She should be a general. She should be commanding entire divisions. He read on, his disbelief turning into awe. The files detailed missions that seemed almost fictional in their execution. Sabotage operations, hostage rescues, intelligence extractions, and strategic deployments that had turned the tide in several theaters of war. Each document painted a picture of a woman who had mastered every aspect of leadership, strategy, and combat. A woman whose experience and skill dwarfed most officers at Camp Pendleton. He felt a mixture of admiration and fear. This was someone he could neither predict nor control. She was operating on a plane far above him, far beyond the normal chain of command. And the most unsettling part, she had walked into his mess hall earlier that day, smiled at him, and casually mentioned commanding units larger than the entire camp. Harlan closed his eyes for a moment, trying to steady his racing thoughts. The notion that he had teased her just hours earlier, assuming her abilities were limited, filled him with both embarrassment and unease. A sudden noise made him glance up, the metallic click of a door handle down the corridor. His heart skipped a beat. Had someone caught him here? No one should be in the file room at this hour. He glanced toward the door, shadows stretching across the room, and heard only the faint hum of the air conditioning. His pulse slowed slightly, but his mind was racing too fast to calm down. Returning to the files, he found more astonishing revelations. Her experience in leadership training programs for other officers, her involvement in strategic planning for high-level military operations, and even her participation in joint missions with international forces, often in secret. Every page he turned reinforced a single, undeniable truth. Captain Elena Ramirez was operating far beyond the rank listed on her uniform. Harlan's thoughts drifted back to the drills earlier that day. Every precise command, every calculated movement on the field, everything he had witnessed suddenly made perfect sense. She wasn't just competent, she was exceptional, and yet she had chosen to conceal her true rank and achievements. A nagging question rose in his mind. Why? Why would someone of her caliber, of such experience and skill, remain in the shadows as a captain? Why walk into a mess hall, allow herself to be underestimated and accept casual teasing? There had to be a reason, perhaps strategic, perhaps personal, but Harlan had no way of knowing. Hours passed as he continued to pore over the documents, each discovery adding layers to his understanding of her. The more he learned, the more he realized the danger and opportunity presented by someone like her being stationed at Camp Pendleton. She was not just a leader, she was a force capable of reshaping the base itself. And if anyone tried to underestimate her again, the consequences could be unpredictable. Harlan finally leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The files lay open before him, a testament to Elena Ramirez's unparalleled skill and discretion. He ran a hand over his face, trying to process what he had discovered. And then, almost as if in response to the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind, a single, simple truth crystallized. She isn't just a captain. She is a master of her craft, hiding in plain sight, and I have no idea what she is capable of next. A faint smile tugged at his lips, part admiration, part fear, part excitement. Tomorrow, he realized, would never be the same. The Elena Ramirez he had assumed he understood was gone. What remained was a woman whose presence, authority, and experience could alter everything he thought he knew about leadership, and possibly everything about himself. And somewhere deep in the back of his mind, a single thought persisted, loud and insistent. I need to be ready. I have never faced anyone like her before. Harlan gathered the files carefully, returning them to their secure location. He closed the reinforced door, the metallic click echoing in the empty room. He walked back through the silent corridors, his mind racing with strategies, questions, and newfound respect. Tomorrow, he knew, he would see her in action again. But now, armed with knowledge of her true experience, the stakes had changed entirely. The night outside was deep and quiet, the faint glow of distant lamps casting long shadows across the base. And somewhere beyond the barracks and training fields, Elena Ramirez rested, unaware of the storm she had already set in motion, or perhaps fully aware, having calculated every possible outcome. Harlan returned to his office, sitting down heavily in his chair. He stared at the wall for a long time, processing everything he had uncovered. He knew one thing: nothing at Camp Pendleton, or anywhere else, would ever be ordinary again. And when she revealed her full self, it would shock everyone, including me. The next morning, a cold wind swept across Camp Pendleton, carrying the faint tang of the ocean and the earthy scent of damp sand. The Marines assembled on the training field before sunrise, the chill in the air doing little to dampen the tension. Today was a full-scale field exercise, one of the most challenging simulations on the base. A convoy ambush scenario designed to test reaction times, strategy, and leadership under pressure. Major Tom Harlan stood with his arms crossed at the edge of the field, clipboard in hand. He had reviewed the simulation dozens of times, memorizing the parameters and possible outcomes. He believed he was ready. He believed he had seen leadership in action. Then Captain Elena Ramirez arrived, her presence immediately drawing the eyes of every Marine. Boots crunching against the gravel, uniform sharp, gaze steady, She exuded a calm authority that made hesitation seem impossible. The whispers from yesterday's mess hall challenge still lingered in Harlan's mind, but he had pushed them aside, until now. As the convoy moved into position, Alina walked along the vehicles, checking communications, scanning terrain, and silently observing her squad. She didn't shout commands. She didn't gesture broadly, but every Marine knew exactly what to do. "Convoy Bravo, report," she said calmly, her voice carrying across the field with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "Convoy in position, Captain," came the uniform reply, the soldier's confidence bolstered by her presence. Harlan's brow furrowed. He had expected hesitation, second-guessing, or minor confusion. Instead, the soldiers moved with cohesion and focus that was almost eerie. Then it began. The ambush. Explosions erupted from the simulated enemy positions, smoke filling the air, the deafening sound of blank gunfire echoing across the field. Marines dove for cover, instinctively firing back, but confusion reigned. Harlan took a step forward, ready to take control. He had handled scenarios like this dozens of times, but before he could issue a single order, Alina's voice cut across the chaos. "Left flank suppressing fire. Vehicle 2 fall back 20 meters. Gonzalez cover the rear, move now." The commands were crisp, precise, and perfectly timed. Every Marine responded instantly, shifting positions, covering each other, and forming a coherent defensive line. Harlan froze, realizing she had taken control of the situation before he had even processed it. He watched, stunned, as she moved among the Marines, issuing instructions that were both calculated and intuitive. She wasn't reacting blindly to the chaos, she anticipated it. Every maneuver she ordered neutralized a potential threat before it could escalate. "Suppressing fire on the ridge. Cover left now. Jackson, provide medevac cover." Her voice was calm, unshakable, a constant anchor in a sea of confusion. Harlan's mind raced. He had led drills like this. He had faced live fire simulations. And yet, watching Alina operate, he felt like an observer rather than a participant. Her command wasn't just effective, it was flawless. Every decision minimized risk and maximized efficiency. The ambush intensified. Smoke thickened, obscuring vision. Marines shouted over the explosions, disoriented by the simulated chaos. And still, Alina remained composed, her eyes scanning, analyzing, calculating. "Hernandez, flank left and cover the ridge. Rodriguez, support him from the right. Evacuate the wounded through Sector Delta." Her words were not merely commands, they were lifelines. Her presence alone kept the Marines coordinated, focused, and alive in a scenario designed to overwhelm them. Harlan felt a cold realization settle over him. He was witnessing something rare, extraordinary, and terrifying. The exercise continued for nearly an hour, each wave of simulated attacks testing the squad to its limits. And through it all, Alina remained calm, moving like a conductor orchestrating a deadly symphony. Every Marine under her command followed seamlessly, trusting her instincts implicitly, their fear transformed into coordinated action. Harlan's notebook lay forgotten at the edge of the field. He couldn't take notes fast enough to capture what he was witnessing. Every command she issued, every adjustment she made, was a masterclass in leadership under fire. When the final wave of the ambush ended, the field fell silent. Smoke lingered in the air, the stench of burned pyrotechnics heavy, and exhausted Marines leaned against vehicles, catching their breath. The drill had been designed to produce chaos, and it had, but under Alina's leadership, chaos had been transformed into precision. Harlan approached her cautiously, his usual sarcasm stripped away. "Captain, that was," he struggled to find words, "remarkable." Alina glanced at him briefly, her expression calm but piercing. "Thank you, Major," she said softly, "but it's only a drill. The key isn't showing who's tough, it's ensuring everyone survives. That's what leadership is." Harlan swallowed hard. He had assumed he knew leadership. He had believed that experience in the field was enough to command respect, but what he had witnessed went beyond experience. Alina Ramirez possessed an instinctive understanding of human behavior, terrain, and tactical advantage that transcended rank. As the Marines disassembled their gear, still buzzing with adrenaline, whispers began to spread. "Did you see how she controlled everything?" one Marine asked. "It was like she knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened." "Yeah," another replied. "I've been in exercises like this for years. Never seen anyone move like that." Harlan stayed silent, observing her as she moved among the soldiers, offering corrections, guidance, and encouragement. Her authority wasn't loud or boastful. It was inherent, unshakable, and undeniable. Finally, he stepped beside her, voice quieter than usual. "Captain, you handled that flawlessly. I don't know how you did it." Alina looked at him, a faint smile on her lips, as if acknowledging his respect without needing to ask for it. "Major, it's not about how I did it. It's about how they responded. Leadership is not about showing off. It's about ensuring your people can act confidently, even under fire." Harlan nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. He realized something profound. He had been trained to lead soldiers, but Alina had been trained, or perhaps born, to lead everything around her, without hesitation, without ego, without flaw. A sudden shout from a young Marine broke the moment. "Captain, we're ready for a debrief." Alina turned, nodding. "Good, let's gather and review." As the Marines assembled, Harlan hung back slightly, watching her organize the post-drill debrief with the same precision she had demonstrated during the ambush. She moved among them like a general orchestrating a battlefield, noting every mistake, praising every correct maneuver, and ensuring that every Marine left with a clear understanding of their performance. Harlan couldn't help but marvel. He had spent years studying military strategy, leading troops, and preparing for every conceivable scenario. And yet, here he was, watching a captain operate with the skill, authority, and foresight of someone far higher in rank, someone who could command entire divisions without breaking a sweat. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the field, Harlan approached her once more. "Captain, or maybe I should start calling you General," he asked, half teasing, half serious, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Alina met his gaze, expression unreadable. "Major titles don't lead, actions do, remember that." Harlan's smirk faltered. He had thought he understood leadership. He had thought he knew who he was dealing with. Now he wasn't so sure. The ambush had ended, the Marines were safe, and the drill was over. But in Harlan's mind, one thought echoed louder than anything else. "I've underestimated her, and I can't afford to do that again." As the Marines filed back to the barracks, Alina walked at the front, her presence commanding yet understated. Harlan followed silently, a mixture of awe, respect, and curiosity settling over him. He knew one thing for certain. The coming days would reveal far more about Alina Ramirez than he, or anyone, could imagine. And when her true authority was revealed, it would shock everyone at Camp Pendleton. The base was unusually quiet that evening. The training fields lay abandoned, bathed in the pale glow of the setting sun, and the distant hum of vehicles returning from exercises echoed faintly across the compound. Inside the mess hall, however, there was a different energy, a simmering tension that even the hum of conversation couldn't mask. Major Tom Harlan had been packing since dinner began, replaying the events of the past week over and over in his mind. Every drill, every simulation, every casual conversation with Captain Alina Ramirez had revealed a single undeniable truth. She was extraordinary, but he still didn't know the full extent of her experience, or why a woman of her skill would be assigned here as a captain, rather than at the very top of command. Harlan's curiosity had reached the point of obsession. He had spent the afternoon cross-referencing Alina's files with other operations, piecing together clues, and now he was ready to confront her. Not aggressively, but carefully. He needed answers. Alina entered the mess hall just as Harlan was taking a seat at the far end of the room. She moved with her usual calm confidence, boots striking the floor in a steady rhythm, uniform immaculate despite a day of rigorous training. Marines turned their heads, whispering as she passed, some daring to glance longer than decorum allowed. Harlan watched her closely, noting every subtle gesture, every shift in posture, every nuance that hinted at the command she naturally exuded. Finally, after the room had settled, Harlan rose, approaching her cautiously. "Captain Alina," he said, trying to keep his tone casual, though his chest felt tight with anticipation. "Can we talk for a moment?" Alina looked up, her expression neutral, yet her eyes held a spark of curiosity. "Of course, Major," she said, her voice calm and measured, betraying none of the curiosity and tension she must have sensed from him. They moved to a quiet corner of the mess hall, away from prying ears. Harlan gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, poised and alert, as if ready to command even now. "Captain," he began, struggling to maintain his usual confidence, "I've been reviewing some of your previous operations." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your performance during drills in the field, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, and frankly, it doesn't match your rank." Alina tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "And why would rank matter in assessing performance, Major?" she asked softly. Her voice carried no arrogance, only a quiet authority that made him lean forward instinctively, compelled to listen. Harlan cleared his throat. "Because you operate like someone with far more experience. Someone who should be commanding entire units, not a single squad. You anticipate moves before they happen, coordinate flawlessly, and you lead like a general." Alina's faint smile didn't falter. "I lead where I am needed," she said calmly. "Rank is a formality. Leadership is measured by results, not titles." Harlan swallowed hard. He had expected evasive answers, modesty, or perhaps a joke, but her composure left him unprepared. He leaned in slightly. "Alina, Captain Ramirez, what is your real experience? Who are you really?" For a moment she studied him silently. The hum of the mess hall seemed to fade as her eyes locked on his. Every muscle in her body radiated calm control. Then, almost casually, she reached for her jacket and pulled it slightly aside, revealing the subtle insignia on her collar, a gleaming, unmistakable symbol that froze Harlan in place. 4 silver stars. The words didn't need to be spoken. Harlan's eyes widened, his mind racing. 4-star general. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This was not just an extraordinary officer. This was one of the most powerful, influential figures in the United States military. And here she stood, disguised as a captain, allowing him and everyone at Camp Pendleton to underestimate her. "General," Harlan breathed, unable to form a complete sentence. Alina's lips curved into a faint, controlled smile. "You may call me that, Major," she said softly, "but titles are irrelevant here. I am here to ensure the Marines are prepared. That is my mission, and it has nothing to do with rank or ego." Harlan sank into a chair, his usual composure shattered. Every scenario he had imagined over the past week, every attempt to predict her actions, was suddenly meaningless. He had been operating under the illusion that she was a captain, testing her, teasing her, assuming he could gauge her capabilities. He had been wrong, catastrophically so. A silence fell over the corner of the mess hall, heavy with the weight of revelation. Around them, Marines continued eating and talking, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred. Harlan felt exposed, as if the ground beneath him had suddenly tilted. Finally he found his voice, though it was quieter, more measured than usual. Why are you here disguised as a captain? With your experience, your authority, you could be anywhere." Alina folded her arms lightly, her eyes never leaving his. "Because leadership is about presence, Major. It's about understanding your troops, their capabilities, their limits. Sometimes, to truly lead, you must see the ground, not the ivory tower. I came here to prepare these Marines, not to command the base from above." Harlan's mind spun. Every drill, every ambush, every interaction over the past week suddenly clicked into place. The calm authority she exuded, the effortless command, the way she had allowed him to underestimate her, all of it had been deliberate. She had been testing him, testing the squad, testing the entire base's readiness. "And the files?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with awe. "Your missions, your operations, everything I read, it's true." Alina's expression remained composed. "Every word, and more. But it isn't about proving myself to you, Major. It's about ensuring that when the real mission comes, every Marine here is ready." Harlan leaned back, absorbing the enormity of it. The woman who had teased him about rank, who had led the drills with such precision, who had remained calm under fire in the ambush simulation, was a 4-star general, one of the highest-ranking officers in the United States military, hiding in plain sight, evaluating him, evaluating the base, and preparing for something bigger than anyone could imagine. A sudden wave of respect washed over him, mingled with a hint of fear. He realized that in every drill, every interaction, he had underestimated her, and that underestimation could have been fatal if real conflict had arisen. I don't know what to say," he admitted finally, voice low, almost reverent. "You've outclassed me in every possible way." Alina's smile softened. "Then learn, Major, observe, and prepare. The Marines depend on everyone here, yourself included, to rise to the occasion. That is the only way forward." Harlan nodded slowly. He had been humbled but also inspired. For the first time, he felt the weight of true leadership, not the kind dictated by rank or title, but by skill, judgment, and the ability to command respect effortlessly. As Alina straightened, ready to leave the mess hall, Harlan stood as well. "General, thank you for everything." She paused, looking back at him briefly. "Don't thank me, Major. Just make sure you and your Marines are ready when the time comes. That will be thanks enough." And with that, she walked out, leaving Harlan alone in the corner, heart pounding, mind racing, and a single undeniable thought echoing in his head. "I've just met a legend, and I'm only beginning to understand what she's capable of." The murmurs of the mess hall resumed around him, oblivious to the seismic revelation. But Harlan knew. He had seen her in action, he had discovered her records, and now he had witnessed the ultimate proof. The 4-star general, disguised as a captain, was here, quietly shaping the future of Camp Pendleton, one drill, one decision, one Marine at a time. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across the hall, he realized that nothing in his military career had prepared him for this. Alina Ramirez was not just extraordinary. She was unstoppable. The dawn was barely breaking over Camp Pendleton when the call came in. Harlan was still processing the previous day's revelation about Alina Ramirez's true rank when a radio crackled sharply, cutting through the quiet morning. "Major Harlan, this is command. We've received intelligence of a simulated hostage crisis for today's high-stakes operation. You're to assemble the squads immediately. Captain Ramirez, excuse me, General Ramirez, will lead." Harlan's pulse quickened. His mind raced through scenarios as he hastily coordinated the units. His hands were steady, but a knot of tension twisted in his stomach. After yesterday's reveal, he knew this operation would push him, and the Marines, to their limits. He reached the staging area where Alina stood, already assessing the terrain. The early sunlight glinted off her insignia, 4 silver stars catching the faint glow, a silent reminder of the authority she wielded effortlessly. Harlan approached cautiously, still adjusting to the idea that the legendary general he had only read about in files was standing right in front of him. "Major," she said softly, her eyes scanning the assembled Marines. "This is a controlled operation, treated as a live scenario. Lives are simulated, but mistakes will have consequences. I want precision, focus, and absolute discipline. "Understood." "Yes, General," Harlan replied, swallowing hard. He realized he was no longer in a position to challenge her. He would follow and trust her instincts. The operation was set in a sprawling mock urban environment, designed to simulate a hostage scenario in a hostile zone. Buildings lined the area, some marked for demolition, others rigged with obstacles. The hostages were role players, briefed to follow scripted panic responses, while enemy combatants were strategically positioned throughout the simulation area. "Split the squads," Alina commanded, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Alpha, secure the perimeter. Bravo, sweep the interior. Charlie, prepare for extraction. And Harlan, you coordinate the communications and oversee the logistics. Keep the lines open and report anomalies immediately." Harlan nodded, but he couldn't help the tremor in his chest. Everything about her command radiated authority. Every word carried weight, every gesture commanded response. He realized fully that following her was not optional, it was necessary. The squads moved into position. Harlan watched from the command center, monitoring communications through a network of radios. His eyes flicked between screens as Alina directed the squads in real time. Her commands were precise, calculated, and flawless. "Alpha, secure Sector 2 and maintain visual on the rooftops. Bravo, sweep North Corridor, cover angles 5 through 7. Charlie, stand by at Extraction Point Delta. Evacuate hostiles to containment zone if possible," she said, her voice crisp, her tone conveying urgency without panic. Suddenly, a simulated explosion rocked the northern corridor, sending Marines diving for cover. Panic erupted among some of the less experienced soldiers. Harlan's heart raced. He was ready to intervene, but Alina didn't flinch. She immediately issued new commands. "Bravo, fall back 10 meters, suppressing fire. Rodriguez, flank left and cover the corridor. Keep visual on hostages at all costs." Her calm decisiveness transformed chaos into coordination. Marines shifted positions instinctively, responding to her every command. Harlan couldn't believe the speed and precision with which she analyzed the situation, adapted the plan, and executed corrections, all in real time. Minutes passed, each more intense than the last. The simulated hostages were panicking, moving unpredictably. Enemy combatants launched sudden attacks, forcing the squads to react instantly. But under Alina's guidance, every Marine moved with cohesion. Her presence alone commanded focus, and her orders minimized errors. Harlan found himself whispering into the radio, relaying her commands with an almost reverent tone. Every decision she made saved time, effort, and lives in the exercise. He realized that in a real operation, following her lead would be the difference between success and catastrophe. Then came the final obstacle, a building rigged with multiple hostages trapped inside, guarded by combatants. The structure was unstable, the scenario designed to simulate maximum stress. Harlan could feel the tension in the room spike. Every Marine under his observation moved cautiously, glancing to each other for reassurance. But Alina's calm authority was the anchor they needed. "Alpha, breach the east entrance. Use non-lethal measures first. Bravo, provide suppressing fire from the rooftop. Charlie, prepare extraction routes. Timing is critical, move now." Harlan's heart pounded. He watched as Alpha executed the breach, Marines clearing rooms with meticulous care, guided by Alina's directions. Enemy combatants were neutralized, hostages secured, and communication remained seamless. The operation unfolded with a level of precision Harlan had never witnessed outside of real combat zones. By the time the simulation concluded, the field was quiet. Marines were exhausted, faces streaked with sweat and dirt, but the operation had been executed flawlessly. Not a single error had escalated, not a single command had been misinterpreted. Harlan exhaled slowly, sinking into his chair. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Alina Ramirez, General Ramirez, had orchestrated the entire operation as if it were a chess game, predicting every move, countering every threat, and guiding her Marines to success. He stood approaching her cautiously. "General, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like it." She met his gaze, her expression calm but penetrating. "Major, focus on what matters. Observe. Learn. Leadership is not about personal glory, it's about results, and ensuring your team can succeed even under the worst conditions." Harlan nodded slowly, absorbing the magnitude of her words. He had spent years in command, but watching her operate, he realized how little he truly understood about leadership. The weight of responsibility, the foresight required, the ability to anticipate and adapt instantly. Alina embodied all of it. Around them, Marines were whispering among themselves, some in awe, some in disbelief. They had experienced a simulated disaster, yet under her command, it had been transformed into a flawless operation. The impact of her leadership would stay with them long after the exercise. Harlan followed her as she conducted the post-operation debrief. She moved through the squads, offering corrections, encouragement, and praise. Every observation was precise, every recommendation actionable. Even minor mistakes were turned into lessons, reinforcing skill, confidence, and trust. Finally, as the debrief concluded, she turned to Harlan. "Major, remember this. Leadership is about more than rank or recognition. It's about presence, judgment, and the ability to guide others under pressure. Never forget that." Harlan swallowed hard. "Yes, General, I won't." As she walked away, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the field, he realized the full extent of what he had just witnessed. Alina Ramirez was not just a four-star general hiding in plain sight. She was a force of nature, a master strategist, and a teacher of leadership the likes of which he had never encountered. And one thought echoed in his mind, louder than any other. "If I thought I understood leadership before, I was wrong. I've only just begun to see what true command looks like." Harlan knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever real-world operations awaited Camp Pendleton under Alina Ramirez's command, they had a leader unlike any other. And he had no choice but to follow and trust her fully. For the first time in his career, he felt both exhilarated and terrified, knowing he was witnessing greatness in motion. And this was only the beginning. The sun was dipping low on Camp Pendleton, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson. A gentle wind rustled through the sparse trees lining the training grounds, carrying the distant hum of vehicles returning from drills. But in the central courtyard, the energy was electric. Word had spread quietly among the Marines. Today was different. Today, they would witness a demonstration of leadership like no other. Major Tom Harlan stood off to the side, clipboard in hand, but his notes seemed irrelevant. He wasn't preparing orders today. He was observing, absorbing, and trying to reconcile everything he had learned over the past week. Alina Ramirez, General Ramirez, had transformed his understanding of leadership. Every drill, every simulation, every ambush had been a lesson, a revelation, and now it was reaching its culmination. The Marines assembled, boots on the asphalt, faces tense but focused. The air was heavy with anticipation. Harlan glanced around and noticed the subtle shifts in their demeanor. They had seen her skill firsthand, but today, the full measure of her presence would be impossible to ignore. Alina appeared at the head of the formation, walking with her usual calm authority, 4 silver stars gleaming in the fading sunlight. She didn't shout or wave. Her mere presence commanded attention. The murmurs died instantly, replaced by a focused silence. Every Marine straightened instinctively, a testament to the respect she had earned in days that felt like weeks of intense scrutiny and demonstration. Harlan stepped forward, caught between awe and humility. He had been trained to command, to lead, to inspire. But standing here, watching a true 4-star general in action, he felt a rare mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. "Marines," Alina began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the courtyard. Today is not just about drills, tactics, or simulations. It's about understanding the weight of leadership. It's about presence, foresight, and responsibility. It's about the lives in your hands and the decisions you must make in seconds that can change everything. Her gaze swept across the assembled Marines, lingering briefly on Harlan. The Major felt a jolt, not fear, not intimidation, but the undeniable pull of authority that demanded attention, respect, and introspection. Over the past week, she continued, I've watched you learn, struggle, and adapt. I've observed moments of hesitation and instances of brilliance. Today, we synthesize everything we've practiced. You will face scenarios that challenge not only your skill but your judgment. Every decision matters. Every action counts. The demonstration began. A simulated urban crisis, complete with hostages, obstacles, and unexpected contingencies, was laid out before them. Harlan's heart pounded as he watched her command the squads into position. She didn't micromanage, she orchestrated. Every squad knew their role, yet they moved with freedom and precision, responding fluidly to her real-time assessments and adjustments. Explosions, simulated but startlingly realistic, rocked the training field. Smoke and chaos filled the air. Marines scrambled, some panicking, others adapting instinctively. Harlan expected confusion, missed commands, errors, but Alina's voice cut through it all, calm and unwavering. Bravo, flank north corridor. Alpha, secure perimeter. Charlie, cover the extraction zone, keep the hostages calm, maintain visual. The operation unfolded like a symphony. Marines moved as one under her guidance. Each adjustment, each order anticipated potential failure points and preemptively neutralized them. Harlan felt his chest tighten, realizing this was not just skill, it was mastery. Minutes stretched into tension-filled hours. Every simulated threat was met with precision. The hostages were secured. The enemy neutralized. Not a single life was lost, simulated or otherwise. And throughout it all, Alina remained calm, collected, her presence radiating authority that needed no reinforcement. Finally, the scenario ended. The courtyard was quiet, the smoke lingering like a dramatic curtain call. Marines stood at attention, exhausted yet electrified by what they had just experienced. Harlan felt a mixture of relief and reverence. He had seen her in action before, but this was different. This was total command, a display of leadership that transcended rank and experience. Alina turned to the assembled Marines, her expression serious yet gentle. Leadership, she said softly, isn't about titles or medals. It's about responsibility, foresight, and the ability to inspire trust under pressure. It's about ensuring those under your command can succeed, even when you cannot intervene directly. Remember this lesson and carry it forward. Harlan felt the weight of her words more acutely than anyone. Over the past week, he had doubted, teased, and underestimated her. And now, after observing her unparalleled skill in drills, ambushes, and simulations, he understood the truth. Alina Ramirez was beyond ordinary. She was a force of nature. He stepped forward, finally finding his voice. General, Alina, I've underestimated you. His words were quiet, almost reverent, yet they carried the weight of genuine admission. She met his gaze, expression unreadable for a heartbeat. Then just slightly she nodded. Acknowledgement is the first step toward growth, Major. Learn from it, apply it, and never forget that leadership is tested in moments, not titles. Harlan swallowed hard, absorbing every syllable. He realized that his journey with her was just beginning. He had been trained to lead, but she had shown him that true command went beyond technique, beyond tactics, beyond rank. It was instinct, presence, and vision combined. The Marines, sensing the gravity of the moment, began to clap softly, then louder, until the courtyard echoed with genuine admiration and respect. They weren't applauding her rank. They were applauding her mastery, her ability to inspire, and her unwavering commitment to their growth and safety. Alina allowed herself a brief, measured smile. She didn't bask in the applause, she merely acknowledged it, knowing that the respect she commanded was earned, not demanded. Harlan felt a lump in his throat. He had spent his career striving for recognition, believing that experience and rank defined authority. But standing here, witnessing the culmination of Alina's lessons, he understood a deeper truth. Authority was earned through action, decisiveness, and the unwavering courage to guide others, even in the most chaotic circumstances. As the Marines dispersed, Harlan stayed behind, walking beside her. "General, I don't know if I'll ever see leadership like this again," he admitted. Alina glanced at him, her expression softening. "You will, Major, if you truly learn to observe, adapt, and respect those under your command. Leadership isn't about who is in charge. It's about ensuring the team survives, thrives, and succeeds. Remember that, and you'll carry this lesson far beyond Camp Pendleton." Harlan nodded slowly, a newfound respect and humility settling over him. He realized that in the coming months and likely years, Alina Ramirez's presence would shape not just the Marines she led directly, but the entire culture of the base. And he would be a part of it, learning from her example, carrying forward the principles she had demonstrated so effortlessly. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Harlan felt a sense of awe unlike anything he had experienced. Alina Ramirez, four-star general, master strategist, unparalleled leader, had arrived at Camp Pendleton not for glory, but to shape the next generation of Marines. And he knew, without a doubt, that her legacy would be remembered long after today. The final words of the day lingered in his mind, echoing with the weight of truth and inspiration. Leadership is not about rank, it's about presence, foresight, and action. And when it is wielded with precision, respect, and courage, it is unstoppable. Harlan watched her walk away, her figure illuminated by the fading light, and for the first time he felt not just respect, but awe. He had underestimated her once. He would never make that mistake again. And somewhere deep in the courtyard, the Marines whispered among themselves, their voices filled with newfound determination. They had witnessed greatness, and it had changed them forever. Alina Ramirez had arrived as a captain in title, but she left no doubt. She was a legend in action, a master of leadership, and a force no one would forget. The legend of Alina Ramirez had only just begun.